Hi and welcome back to the channel. Top 10s are always interesting when it comes to movie stuff because they're incredibly subjective. It doesn't matter whether they're done for enormous websites or little channels like this. There are always going to be differences of opinion. There are always going to be outliers that people didn't think about going, oh yeah, that'd be interesting in that context. So I went to the community tab on the channel and asked people to give me what kind of top 10s they wanted me to do for movie related stuff for the channel. I also did it on Facebook and I got flooded with answers. I got maybe 150, 200 answers. Very little overlap, which is kind of interesting. Very little overlap in the kind of subject matter for the top 10s. So I've now got an enormous database of top 10s to do for future videos when I want to kind of just go through the good stuff and pass it on to you as the viewers. I kind of ignored most of the suggestions for this particular video. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate them. Thank you very much to everybody that put in a suggestion. But I've got, let me have a look here, how many I've got. 1, 2, 3 top 10s with one more extra. Bit of a hot topic, but I'm looking forward to doing that one. So let's get the other ones out of the way, and hope you're all doing okay. So this idea came up because I was watching one of the Drive-In Delirium videos that Umbrella Entertainment put out, which is a compilation of movie trailers. And they did a whole stream of Giallo movies, the Italian crime movies, very stylized, very 1960s. Gialli are a really specific genre, and people like Lucio Fulci and Mario Bava worked in them. They are stylized as hell, they are gory, they are sexy, they're a very weird specific genre. And I came up with the idea of giving my top 10 Giallo movie titles. Now some of these are transcribed from Italian and the English language version of it. Some are English language versions that aren't related to the Italian titles of the films. But there's a certain wonderfulness about Italian Giallo movie titles. They're poetic and evocative, and they are almost clickbait in the best possible way. And so I thought I'd pick out my top 10. There are many more of them, and many more that could have gone on the list. But here's the top 10. Number 10, Death Laid an Egg, which is a 1968 Giallo with Gina Lollobrigida, Jean-Louis Trintignant, and Ewa Olin in it. I've seen the trailer, but I haven't watched the movie yet. And that one looks pretty full on, and interesting film, but Death Laid an Egg is just such a title that you would find on a spinner rack full of detective novels in the 1950s, and I like it. The next one I've got from 1970 is Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion. Now the trailer on this one is quite graphic. I'm not even going to try to show any of the trailer. It's quite graphic, it's gory, it's titillating, let's say. And it's pretty much what's on the label. It is Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion. It's a blackmail kind of thing. There are murders, gory murders, that rich Kensington Gore kind of fake blood, which these days softens the horror in a weird way, but the suspense is still there in those movies. Third one, Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Now I like that as a title. It's a Dario Argento movie from 1971. With Michael Brandon, Mimsy Farmer, Jean-Pierre Mariel, and Bud Spencer from Bud Spencer and Terence Hill joints. But Four Flies on Grey Velvet, I have a copy of that one because I'm kind of diving more into Argento now that I've overcome my triggering by Suspiria. And I did a whole video about how I couldn't watch the movie Suspiria for decades. And I'll post a link there. But Four Flies on Grey Velvet is a beautifully evocative title. It projects an image, and a kind of mysterious image as well. It's really nice. Next one, number 4, is a Lucio Fulci movie starring Florinda Balkan, Stanley Baker, and Jean Sorel. A Lizard in a Woman's Skin. Now, that could be the old science fiction TV series V, but basically, it's a Giallo with Stanley Baker in it. And I haven't watched this one yet. Again, I have a copy of this on DVD, but I haven't watched it yet. So what I might do after I finish this video is do some Gialli, because I think I'm in the mood to kind of sit through a few of those and just enjoy the cinematography, the way it builds suspense, and the kind of Baroque ways people get murdered in those movies. Number 5, Short Night of Glass Dolls from 1971, directed by Aldo Lardo. Stars Ingrid Thulin, Jean Sorel, and one of my favourite Italian actors of the time, Mario Adorf. Don't know too much about that, but Short Night of Glass Dolls sounds like it could be the title of a Harlan Ellison story. It's a kind of, again, like all the rest of it builds an image, and that's kind of fun. Let's see, number 6, Death Smiles on a Murderer from 1973, directed by Joe D'Amato, starring Ewa Olin, Klaus Kinski, and Angela Bow. Now, I've said what my problem with Klaus Kinski is in videos before, but I like that title, Death Smiles on a Murderer. It's, again, one of those kind of detective novel type titles, but it builds an image that kind of is clickbaity in the best possible way. There's number 7, What Have They Done to Your Daughters, which is not the Italian title, from 1974, with Giovanna Ralli, Claudio Castanelli, and Mario Adorf again. I'll be there just for the Mario Adorf. But the title is that kind of evocative clickbaity title. It's almost a newspaper headline from a sensationalist tabloid. And it kind of worked for me. So number 8, The Case of the Bloody Iris. Now, are we talking about a flower or are we talking about an eyeball? It's a kind of ambiguous title. Directed by Giuliano Canamio, with George Hilton and Onwij Fenech, who was a very beautiful woman. The Case of the Bloody Iris is a little more of a prosaic title than a lot of the other ones. But again, it does raise questions, and it's got that clickbaitiness because it does raise questions. Then we go to a well-known one, which I think I've got the disc for here. Then we go for number 9, we've got Don't Torture a Duckling, directed by Lucio Fulci, starring Florinda Balkan, Barbara Boucher, and Thomas Millian. I've got the Cinema Cult DVD of that, which I picked up crazily cheap. It looks really good. After several young boys are murdered in a small southern Italian village, Martelli, played by Thomas Millian, travels to the town to investigate, but finds that the residents are ignorant, distrustful, and highly superstitious. He teams up with a promiscuous woman the town has ostracized, and soon suspects that the local clergyman is responsible for the horrific crimes. I've got to watch that one. So this is the second to last one. The last one is Dario Argento again. And it's The Bird with Crystal Plumage, which again sounds a little bit like a short story by Harlan Ellison, but it's a beautifully evocative title. It stars American actor Tony Musante, Susie Kendall, who was English, and Eva Renzi. I'm really going to have to watch it. I know I've got a copy of it in the back room, but I'm going to have to do a binge on Giallo, I think. That's going to be the genre I look at this month. It's got me hooked. It's got me kind of wanting to see more of it. And I'm sure there's some Gialli and other... In fact, there's a Gialli documentary that I know is on Tubi, and there are Giallo movies on Tubi and Plex and other platforms like that, the free streaming services. So you might want to look at those. So there are the 10 Giallo ones. This one is close to my heart. This next list of 10 is close to my heart. 10 favourite children's films that children don't watch anymore. So I'm going based on my own childhood and my kind of adulthood, and the things I liked and the things I like now. So I'm basing it on that. There's not a piece of Disney in it. Reassure yourselves, there's no Disney in this one. But there are good films, and some of them you've seen, some of them you may not have.
Gather round, lads and lasses, gather round. You've been shanghaied aboard for the last cruise of the Crimson Pirate. A long, long time ago in the far, far Caribbean. Remember, in a pirate ship, in pirate waters, in a pirate world.
Number 10 is one of my favourites. The Crimson Pirate, starring Burt Lancaster, Nick Cravat, Torrin Thatcher, Eva Bartok, and Christopher Lee turns up in it as well in a small role. It's one of the great swashbuckling adventures that doesn't get talked about or it gets enough love. There's your Burt Lancaster on the back swashing his buckle. It's a movie that's tongue-in-cheek. It breaks the fourth wall wonderfully. It's filmed on some beautiful locations in the Mediterranean, and it's great. It's one of those great 1950s Burt Lancaster adventure movies like His Majesty O'Keefe and other movies like that. It's a lot of fun, and it's got Nick Cravat, who was the acrobat partner of Burt Lancaster when they both worked in the circuses. So The Crimson Pirate, you should have a copy of, you should watch. It is just gloriously over the top, enthusiastic fun. So that's number 10. Number 9 is another movie that I first saw this on my birthday. It must have been my 13th birthday. And I loved it because of that. I went to the Regal Cinema in Liverpool, where I grew up, for the Saturday matinee and saw The Valley of Gwangi, which is just one of my favourite Harryhausen movies. It's got James Franciscus, it's got Richard Carlson, it's got Gila Goland, it's got Lawrence Naismith. And it's about a travelling Wild West show. The guy who's kind of associated with it, played by James Franciscus, finds a lost valley where dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals exist. The dinosaurs are by Ray Harryhausen. You've got cowboys versus dinosaurs. You've got cowboys capturing an Allosaurus. You've got a Mexican curse. You've got Allosaurus versus elephant. You've got a terrific ending which kind of mirrors The Beast in 20,000 Fathoms in a different kind of location. And it's got a really nice soundtrack by Jerome Moross. It's totally over-the-top fun, and I just love The Valley of Gwangi. I can watch it a couple of times a year and enjoy it a lot. Number 8 is a movie I only saw when I was an adult because it wasn't really available anywhere in Australia. The first live-action adaptation of a Dr. Seuss story. In fact, it was an original Dr. Seuss story for the screen. From 1953, 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. You can't not love this movie. It stars Peter Lindhayes, Mary Healy, Tommy Reddick as a little kid, and Hans Conried as Dr. Terwilliger. It's got music, it's got dancing, it's got incredibly surrealistic sets. It's in colour. It's in only 1.37 to 1 aspect ratio because they didn't quite have Academy ratio for it. And this particular indicator Blu-ray has a ton of extras, which is always a nice thing. It runs a tight 89 minutes. The songs are memorable and fun. It's seen from a kid's point of view, which is a lovely way of doing it. It's not grown-ups condescending to children. The viewpoint is always at a kid's level of viewpoint. And Hans Conried as Dr. T is just over-the-top, wonderful, snide and sarcastic and evil in the best possible way. And again, the visuals in this are super spectacular. And I like it a lot. Number 7 is a movie I saw as a kid. And I loved, and I still love it. And I've got the soundtrack, and I've got it on Blu-ray, and I will continue to love it, even though it is silly and over the top and cartoonish live action. It's got some really interesting people in it, and it is Puffin Stuff from 1970, starring Jack Wilde, of course, Billy Hayes, Martha Ray is in it. Mama Cass Elliot playing Witch Hazel, plays a witch in it, and she just has a lovely time with that. And of course Billy Barty playing a lot of the small characters in costumes. Based on the H.R. Puffin Stuff TV series. It's the feature-length film. It's got some really nice music in it too. The music is great. This is beautiful. It's spectacular in colour. At the time, H.R. Puffin Stuff was on TV when I was a kid. Australia didn't have colour TV, so you go to the cinema and you see what colour Puffin Stuff is for the first time. You see what colour Kling and Clang are, and all the other people in the town who are imaginary. You got Jack Wilde doing the better than usual child acting. And he was a man who grew up to have a lot of problems in his life. But in this one, his enthusiasm's there. Now, number 6 is a movie that was a train wreck to make. I'll tell you what it is, but then I'll tell you why it was a train wreck. It's Dr. Dolittle from 1967, which I rewatched recently. And Dr. Dolittle with Rex Harrison, Samantha Eggar, and Anthony Newley was a nightmare to make. Rex Harrison did it for 2 years about playing the role. In fact, they had actually hired Christopher Plummer to replace him. And then Rex Harrison said, no, I'll do the movie. And so they had to pay Christopher Plummer $300,000 to do nothing because he had a contract. The movie is full of animals, it's full of songs. The songs are by Leslie Bricusse, who was a writing partner of Anthony Newley's. The sets are wonderful and over the top and were crazily expensive. Tons of animals in it. Richard Attenborough singing a song in it. and he came in the last minute to play that role, is marvellous. The problem is that with all the animals on set, all the sets of Dr. Doolittle's house and all the other places that are kind of soundstage sets in the movie had to be waterproof, because every night they had to sluice them out with water and ammonia because all the animals had pissed and shit everywhere all over the sets. And Rex Harrison was a problematic guy to work with. His wife, Rachel Roberts, the actress, had incredible alcohol issues and was incredibly crass and rude at parties, and when she got drunk she'd run around on all fours and bark like a dog. It was just a nightmare to make, and Rex Harrison was throwing anti-Semitic slurs at Anthony Newley. The fact that it got made at all is amazing, and the fact that it got an Oscar nomination is astounding. And one of the biggest problems from a child's point of view of this movie is it runs nearly 3 hours. It's got an intermission, but it's crazily long for a kids' film, and kids didn't sit still for that, particularly when it's Rex Harrison kind of half singing a love song to a seal. Really problematic for people of tender years to watch this one. But for me, I rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of works. Knowing all of the shitstorms around the creation of the film just made it a more interesting watch for me. I was kind of looking in the corners of the screen to see if there was any bird shit anywhere or anything like that, but they did a good job of not doing that. So Dr. Dolittle is one of the great train wreck movies of 1960s cinema that nearly killed the studio that made it. That brings us to another big tentpole movie from the 1960s, 1969, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is wonderful because Dick Van Dyke doesn't try to do an English accent. We all know and love Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I'm not too fond of Sally Ann Howes playing Truly Scrumptious. I think she's had a nice kind of soprano voice, but really didn't project well on the screen. The kids are actually reasonable in this one. The kids aren't obnoxious kids, which is great. And the supporting cast is superb. You've got Gert Frober playing the Baron Bombburst of Bulgaria. You've got Anna Massey playing his wife. You've got Benny Hill playing one of the villagers, a toy maker, which is kind of interesting to see Benny Hill in a non-Benny Hill context. You've got the wonderful Australian actor and dancer Robert Helpman playing the child catcher, and he is over the top lovely in this film. And then of course you've got the inestimably valuable Lionel Jeffries playing Grandpa, who gets to sing his song Posh while being kidnapped by a Bulgarian dirigible. And you got to love that. Lionel Jeffries is just such fun in this movie. Interestingly enough, he played Dick Van Dyke's character Caractacus Potts' father in this, but he was 6 months younger than Dick Van Dyke. So there is that. I love Chitty Chitty Bang Bang because of that over-the-top wonderfulness of it. Based on a story by Ian Fleming, of course. And it stands up well now, but it is a little long for kids. But for me, it was a great rewatch. And I had a very old DVD copy of it, but I upgraded to a Blu-ray, which I'm waiting on at the moment, because I want to get as sharp an image and as sharp a picture on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang that I can. And the Blu-ray I got from eBay was fairly cheap. So we've got that. So let's see, number 4. Again, this is a adaptation of a TV series I only ever saw in black and white until I saw it in the cinema in movie form in colour. 1966, The Man Called Flintstone, which is the Flintstone spy movie. Of course, it's got Alan Freed doing the voices, and Mel Blanc and all the other people, and June Foray and all those people doing the voices. And it works really well. It's psychedelic in a whole bunch of ways. Beautiful cartoon, psychedelic. The soundtrack and the songs in it are way above what you'd expect for a generic kids film. I really like the songs and the fact that they're kind of enthusiastic with them. The visuals during the song numbers are psychedelic, and they're Hanna-Barbera really going large and going bigger than the small screen on this. And I haven't watched this for a few years, but I liked it when I watched it, and I'll watch it again because I like the whole part of it, even though of course the Flintstones were a pastiche on the Honeymooners. I think they became their own thing. And this movie cemented that for me, because The Man Called Flintstone played into that spy craze of the 1960s in a different context. And it kind of works. I love it passionately beyond its abilities and its quality. Number 3 is a movie that I picked up a copy of because it finally came out on Blu-ray. It was made in Cinerama, that incredibly widescreen format which required 3 cameras to film the movies and 3 projectors to project them on a curved screen in a Cinerama cinema. And because of that limitation, because of the Cinerama process, close-ups couldn't be done, and perspective was crazy. There's some bits where people in the end of the screen look, on the sides of the screen, look really small, and then as they move to the center of the screen they appear much larger. It was a crazy format that only ever worked in cinemas. And The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm is one of the great last cinematic Cinerama movies. Now there's 2 discs on this version which I like a lot, because the first one is the letterbox version, so it's like a rectangular screen and things move in and out of perspective in a weird way. The second one is a Smile Box edition. Now Smile Box, the screen curves like that at the top and the bottom, and so you see it in a more realistic aspect ratio. I'm not sure, but I think it might look good if you projected it on, if you showed the movie from the Blu-ray player on, say, a curved computer monitor. It might work well on that kind of thing. But I like this, based on Grimm's fairy tales, directed by George Pal and Henry Levin. George Pal did the story sequences. The frame around it are the 2 Grimm brothers, played by Lawrence Harvey and Carl Baum. They have different accents because Lawrence Harvey doesn't have the same accent as Carl Baum. But the supporting cast is fantastic. You've got Lawrence Harvey, you've got Claire Bloom, Barbara Eden's in there as well, Walter Slezak, Oscar Homolka. Yvette Mimieux and Russ Tamblyn danced together in one of the stories based on the Grimm's fairy tales. You've got Jim Backus in there playing a king in one of the fairy tales. Terry Thomas is in there, and Buddy Hackett in a little piece called The Singing Bone. I like this. I saw it on the big screen when I was very, very small. But it holds up well now. It's kind of self-conscious in a way. In a lot of ways it's self-conscious. But I like what they did. I like the stop-motion animation and the dragon in particular, which was done by Jim Danforth and Wah Chang. And the dragon works well, even though Buddy Hackett's English accent is sub-Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins in quality. But I like what they do with this. I like the imagination that went into this. And by the end of the film, I kind of like the Grimm brothers too. They really do, even though one of them's cranky and the other one's a dreamer. I think by the end of the film, we come to like them. We can come to understand them a lot better. It's one of those movies which has George Pal's gentleness about male relationships, which you also saw in The Time Machine. And I'm glad I've got this one. I'm going to rewatch it. It really, it's a forgotten movie in a lot of ways because it wasn't in that awkward Cinerama format. But I'm glad that Warner Brothers put it out, and I'm glad that I finally found a copy of it on Zavi at a reasonable price. The other George Pal movie I want to get a copy of, but I haven't got a copy of yet, is Tom Thumb, with Russ Tamblyn and Jesse Matthews, and Peter Sellers is in there, and Terry Thomas as well. I want to get a nice Blu-ray copy of that, but I haven't been able to yet. But The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm I like a lot. Let's have a look here. Number 2. This one's a simple one. This one is a no-brainer. Jason and the Argonauts. Todd Armstrong, Nancy Kovac, you got Lawrence Naismith, you got Nigel Green playing Hercules, you've got the Greek gods. I think Niall McGuinness is in there as well, and Honor Blackman maybe. But one way or the other, Jason and the Argonauts was a fantastic piece of cinema when I was a kid, and it's got some of Ray Harryhausen's most challenging and best stop-motion animation. You got the children of the Hydra, the skeleton warriors. You got the Hydra itself. You got Talos, the giant bronze statue. You've got so many cool bits in this movie that I find it repeatedly watchable. It really is one of the great children's movies that kids don't watch anymore. And number 1, this one I love again with a passion. The 1940 version of Thief of Baghdad, directed by Michael Powell, Ludwig Berger, Tim Whelan, with additional contributions by William Cameron Menzies and the Corder brothers Vincent and Zoltan. Incredibly hard movie to make, this version of Thief of Baghdad. They had to move production from England to America halfway through because there was a chance that the locations and the sets were going to be bombed by the Germans. So they moved everything, including the crew and the actors and everything, to America from England in the middle of World War II. It stars John Justin, of course, as the prince who becomes a beggar, June Dupre as the princess who becomes the lust object for the evil Jafar, played wonderfully by Conrad Veidt. You got Sabu as the little thief, Abu, and of course Rex Ingram playing the genie. Now this movie has so much cool stuff in it. It could be a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. If somebody made a computer game of Thief of Baghdad, they could do worse than following the plot of this one, because it's just, again, it's that kind of cultural appropriation of Arabian Nights stories, but it does it respectfully. If you look at the world in which the prince and Sabu's character live in, it's an incredibly textured one. There are Chinese people, there are Sikhs, there are Muslims. Incredibly, for the 1940s in England, they must have cleared out every ethnic restaurant in London to get the people for the extras in there. But it gives you this wonderfully weird but lived-in world of a multicultural meeting place, a kind of trade crossing, where all the cultures of the known world come together. And so it plays very multicultural to a modern audience. And of course, having Sabu as one of the lead characters, and Rex Ingram as well, it's more kind of, not colourblind casting, but more appropriately ethnic casting than many other movies of the time. So that's the children's movies that children don't watch anymore. So there are my list. Thank you very much for watching. So if you want to support the channel, you can donate at patreon.com/paleocinema. You can also support the channel by liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment about these top 10 lists. What do you like in these top 10 lists, and what do you think I missed out? There may be movies I don't like, and because I haven't put Disney into the children's list, there are a whole bunch of movies that people may want to add themselves. But I had a lot of fun making these lists. They were great to just sit down with a pen and paper, even though I've transcribed them onto a tablet, and work out what I wanted to put into the lists. It was a good mind exercise for me. Thanks for watching. Look after yourselves. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Make your own lists up. There are going to be some fun things that you put in your list that I would never think to put in mine. So look after yourselves, and I'll catch you next time.